Destiny has undoubtedly been one of the most successful gaming franchises over the last decade, but it's also experienced more ups and downs than pretty much any other game out there. As someone who has been playing Destiny since the very start, all the way back in 2014, the game always had, those points where you'd play a little bit less, right? You'd get off the game, you'd wait for the new season, you'd wait for the new DLC, and the game would kind of go in this loop of being bad, and then it would be good again, and then it'd be kind of bad, but then you would think like, hey, it's Bungie, they know what they're doing, the game is going to be good in, no time at all. But infamously, there has been a few situations where that didn't really happen, and we're lucky that the game even survived them. For one, Curse of Osiris. This is the one everybody likes to point out, and they're absolutely right for doing it. Back in Curse of Osiris, Bungie stated themselves that they were, I believe, 3 weeks away from shutting down the servers entirely and just cutting their losses. The game was performing that badly, and players really just were not enjoying it at all. And obviously, if players aren't enjoying it, Bungie is not making any money. And knowing that information, one would probably think that Bungie would do everything in their power to avoid going back to those Curse of Osiris days where the player count was as low as 30,000. Well, newsflash, the player count is at times 20,000 now. At its peak. Like, you can look at a 24-hour peak on Steam and it will be 20,000. That is absolutely abysmal for Destiny 2, and it hasn't been that low since, like I said, Curse of Osiris. It has been that long. Now, to say that I didn't see this coming would be an absolute lie. I've been saying it for a while now that if they keep making horrible changes to the game and not doing anything players want, the game is just naturally going to go downhill. But how exactly did it go downhill so fast? And what changes led to this point? And I'm just going to be completely honest, a lot of it has to do with how poorly Bungie has managed PvP over the past few years, mainly because I want to point this out. A lot of people think Destiny is a PvE game or, a PvP game, whatever, right? Destiny 2 is neither. It is both, if that makes sense. It is not one or the other. Destiny 2 will never thrive if only one of them is good. If PvP is good and PvE is bad, the game's not going to thrive. If it's the other way around, it's still not going to thrive because it needs both. A lot of people like to play PvE and then use those weapons that they get in PvP, and that is kind of their fun gameplay loop, and I don't blame them. That was me for years and years. I enjoyed both modes, but once PvP went downhill, it also made me not really want to play PvE either, because, well, what was the point? If I was going to take the guns into PvP and just get smacked by somebody throwing down 37 abilities and never shooting their primary once, where was the enjoyability in the game? Yes, I just made up that word, but we needed to use it for this circumstance. Now, I will get more in depth into why PvP became so bad in just a little bit, but I also want to point out the other main things that really made the game a lot worse. For one, 3.0 subclasses. Whichever way you want to spin it, they introduced a lot of power creep, and they also took away a lot of fan favorite abilities that we had with 2.0s and a lot of the balance in the game. More on that in just a little bit, but a lot of you guys can see where this is going. In addition to the wildly overtuned 3.0 subclasses, we also had things like not ever getting any new weapon models as rewards. I don't know what the stat is, but it's been like 3 years since Bungie has added a new legendary weapon model to the game. Unless they added one with like the most recent season, I haven't really been playing the game because it has been so miserable. But to go that long with the same reskinned weapons over and over and over again, it just shows that you have no initiative and your company is lazy. Which also leads me to another point of Bungie not hitting revenue goals and then laying off their employees. They didn't hit these revenue goals because they made horrible decisions and didn't listen to any of their players. It's hard to make money when nobody is happy playing your game. Let me just put it like this, for example. If you're eating a bowl of cereal, right? Let's say it's Cinnamon Toast Crunch, whatever it may be. It's your favorite, right? You're munching down, you're like, damn, this is really good. But then somebody goes and takes a piss in that bowl of cereal. Are you still going to eat it? Probably not. And that is exactly what has happened with Destiny 2. They have basically taken a piss on the game, not cared at all, and then just expected you to still consume the product. And then, they act surprised when they don't hit these revenue goals, and then they get their entire board replaced by Sony, which, let's be real, we saw it coming, because if you put no effort into something, how do you expect good results? Now, here's where I want to rewind just a little bit and go back to those 3.0 subclasses we were talking about earlier, because these were absolute schlop. Like I said, not only did they remove some fan favorite abilities that we had, like Arc Web, for example, they also trivialized a lot of PvE activities. But not only that, they had a much greater negative effect on PvP. Because I don't know how many of you guys actually remember this, with the 30th anniversary DLC, Bungie aimed to increase a lot of the ability cooldowns in the game, especially for overtuned abilities, making the game a lot less ability spam oriented and more, forcing people to actually use their primaries, which is how PvP was intended to be played, and is just a much more enjoyable experience overall. And to put it simply, what they did with that 30th anniversary DLC, it worked. It really did. You could use any weapon you wanted in PvP, and it didn't feel like you were being punished for not using whatever was, the hardest meta option. It felt like you could just load up PvP and have fun. You didn't have to worry about somebody throwing 37 abilities and never peaking. You didn't have to worry about those things with the 30th anniversary DLC, and that's what made it, such a good point for a lot of players, and people, remember it. They remember it fondly. It was good. It was very good. But to absolutely nobody's surprise, when 3.0 subclasses released with Witch Queen, everything that 30th anniversary did that was good for the game got completely undone by the new busted fragments and aspects, allowing people to completely circumvent a lot of those cooldowns and make specific builds where they could cycle very overtuned abilities over and over and over again. Think about things like young Ahamkara Spine Trip Mines. You could just throw them, get like one hit, and then you could throw another one. These things did almost your entire health bar, meaning if you took a little bit of damage, you were dead just by one of those, and they could basically be spammed infinitely. They were that broken, and Bungie didn't really care. It wasn't their focus. And while we're still on the topic of PvP, we have to talk about arguably the worst change of them all, skill-based matchmaking. When skill-based matchmaking was added, it absolutely killed the fun in Destiny 2. I know there are going to be people commenting on this video saying, well, you're just a really good player trying to stomp bad players. That's not how it is. And anybody with more than 2 brain cells can realize that, because Destiny 2 is not a very balanced game when it comes to PvP, especially not, as it's been since 30th anniversary. It has been relatively unbalanced. Skill-based matchmaking can work in a balanced sandbox, which, like I just said, Destiny 2 does not have. So having Destiny's gameplay loop where, you get loot from PvE, and then, let's say you want to use it in PvP, well, now you have skill-based matchmaking. So whatever gun you get, if it's not a meta weapon, you are not going to have a good time with that gun at all whatsoever. It also didn't really help how strict the SBMM was, especially on launch. You would sit in queues for 5+ minutes just to match people who were on the other side of the globe, and then once you got into the game, they would be teleporting to Uzbekistan every time you tried to shoot them, because their connection just wasn't good. Your connection wasn't good for them either, because they're on the other side of the globe. It wasn't a good experience for anybody involved. And some people might want to use the argument that, well, that's only the top however many % of players. It really isn't, because even, people who aren't as good, it's still searching for people in your specific skill bracket. So it's going to take extra time to do that compared to SBMM, which is giving you high quality matches where people aren't, teleporting across the map. Now, I really could go on and on about all of the horrible changes they have made to the game over the past couple years, but it honestly just wouldn't be worth my breath. It would be a waste of time. This video is already approaching the 10-minute mark, so I want to kind of wrap it up and talk about the last very important thing, which is the layoffs. Bungie has had 2 sets of massive layoffs over the past couple years meaning the game is probably not going to get better anytime soon. Yes, Sony did, replace Bungie's board with all of their own members, and they are now the main people making decisions for the game. So could it, in theory, make a comeback to the glory it once had? Yes, but are those odds in our favor? Absolutely not, and I would not be banking on it. If you're somebody who is sitting there playing Destiny 2, hoping and just praying that the game will go back to how it used to be, please do me a favor and just hang it up. I'm going to be so honest, do not sit there and fall for that trap that the game is going to be what it once was, because at this point, we've all done it, and we've all wasted so much time that we could have been, enjoying a different game. And part of it was just the FOMO, right? The fear of missing out. We thought if we stopped playing Destiny for 2 seconds, we were going to miss out on all the good weapons. And to an extent, yes, there have been some weapons that are just absolutely amazing that have not returned, that are impossible to get, like Celerity Igneous Hammer, for example. But other than that, did you really miss out on that much stuff when you stopped playing Destiny? The answer is no. There's always a replacement for things, and if the game ever does get good again, which it probably won't considering the current state that it's in, we have new management. It's Sony now. Things could be a little bit different going forward. Who knows? Like I said though, just don't fall into that toxic gameplay loop. Anyways, that has been pretty much everything I wanted to say for today's video. If you guys did enjoy it, I would greatly appreciate it if you left a like and a comment letting me know what you thought. Anyways, it's been Gravelly. Peace.